Have you ever noticed how a simple physical ailment, like, say, a persistent headache or a bad bout of the flu, can just completely change your mood? Today, we're exploring a truly fascinating concept, the mind body connection. We're going to look at how our physical health sends these deep, undeniable ripples right into our psychological well being. It is a journey that reveals just how incredibly intertwined our biology and our mental state truly are. So, I want you to keep this one central question in the back of your mind as we go through this. How does our physical health actually shape our mental reality? I mean, it's super easy to think of the body and the mind as two completely separate machines, right? Just operating independently. But as you'll see, every single physical ailment, condition, or choice creates a psychological ripple. The mind and the body are literally in constant conversation. To guide us through all this, we're diving into an explainer based on some fantastic academic source material, Units 9 and 10 from IGNOU on physical illness experiences. This text provides highly structured, scientifically backed insights into our health. It's just a great foundation that breaks down the physical and mental experiences of illness in a way that is profoundly revealing. Let's actually ground this in reality with a story straight from the text. Take Deepak, for example. Deepak was in his late 20s, loved his job, happily married. On the outside, everything looked great, right? But he completely ignored his lifestyle. He was always grabbing junk food, loved his sweets, and basically never exercised. And this everyday routine eventually led to severe weight gain and obesity, which left him highly susceptible to a whole host of other health issues. It really perfectly illustrates how those quiet daily choices compound over time. Now contrast that with Arun's story. Arun's situation was a lot more sudden. His friend was in an accident and needed a blood transfusion, so Arun generously rushed to the hospital to donate. But a few days later, he gets called back and receives this absolutely shocking news. He was HIV positive. The floor literally slipped out from under him. He was totally devastated. Arun needed immediate antiretroviral therapy, of course, but just as importantly, he needed immediate counseling to cope with the shock. It really shows us the staggering, immediate psychological fallout of an unexpected physical diagnosis. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the mind-body connection, move into food, diet, and obesity, and then decoding eating disorders. After that, we'll pivot to understanding sexual health and navigating sexual dysfunctions, before wrapping it all up with the spectrum of pain. Section 1. The mind-body connection, the ripple effect of illness. So the absolute crucial point here is that we cannot look at the physical body without also looking at the mind. When the body suffers, the mind inevitably bears the weight of that suffering. The source text highlights this dynamic with a classic quote from Benjamin Franklin. "Eat to live, don't live to eat." It's brilliant advice, but let's be honest, in modern society, we often do the exact opposite, don't we? We're surrounded by this incredible variety of easily accessible, highly caloric food right at our fingertips, and our fast-paced lives leave us very little time to actually burn off those calories. Moving right into Section 2, food, diet, and obesity, fueling the body. It's no secret that what we consume literally alters our biological machinery, and by extension, our psychological state. To function properly, our bodies need 5 main types of fuel for metabolic processes. We've got carbohydrates and lipids for energy, proteins for cell development, vitamins for metabolic regulation, and minerals for physiological functioning. Oh, and we definitely can't forget fiber. While not a nutrient in the traditional sense, it is absolutely critical for digestion. Our bodies need all of these, in just the right proportions, to maintain physical health and mental clarity. Now, when our diet falls out of balance, it can lead to obesity. A really common clinical measurement you've probably heard of is body mass index, or BMI. You calculate it by dividing your weight in kilograms by your height in meters squared. An ideal BMI sits somewhere between 19 and 24, while a BMI of 30 or more is considered obese. However, the text wisely throws in a caveat here. BMI gets a lot of criticism because it actually doesn't account for your body fat percentage versus your muscle mass. But here's the thing, obesity is not just about overeating. There is some really fascinating biology at play here. This brings us to the set point theory of weight. This theory suggests that every single individual has a biological set point governed by genetics that actually determines their natural weight range and metabolism rate. So the big takeaway is that genetic factors, not just willpower or environmental factors, heavily influence a person's physical size and their struggle with obesity. And of course, the impact of obesity goes way beyond the physical. The psychological ripples, they're huge. We're talking lower self-esteem, severe stress, anxiety, and depression. Modern culture often promotes a very specific slim body type, leaving individuals with obesity struggling with poor body image. And worse, they frequently face immense societal stigma, weight-related teasing, and even bullying. It's an incredibly heavy psychological burden to carry. Which brings us to Section 3, Decoding Eating Disorders, the Psychological Toll. When our fundamental relationship with food completely breaks down and becomes a source of extreme distress, it can actually manifest as clinical psychological disorders. The DSM-5 outlines specific feeding and eating disorders that severely impact both physical health and psychological functioning. These include pica, which is eating non-food items, rumination, avoidance/restrictive food intake, anorexia nervosa, which involves severe weight loss and a distorted body image, bulimia nervosa, characterized by binge eating followed by compensatory behaviors like purging, and finally, binge eating disorder. It is so vital to understand that these aren't just quirks. They are serious medical conditions requiring professional diagnosis and therapeutic intervention. So we've seen how deeply food and weight can impact the mind. But what happens when health issues start affecting our most intimate relationships and societal connections? How does this mind-body connection operate in the deeply personal, often stigmatized realm of our lives? Section 4. Understanding Sexual Health. Taking a holistic view. Sexual health is a massive part of our overall well-being, and it requires a completely holistic view, combining physical, mental, and social dimensions. The World Health Organization actually nails this standard. They define sexual health not just as the absence of disease, but as a state of physical, mental, and social well-being in relation to sexuality. It requires a positive, respectful approach and the ability to have safe, pleasurable experiences absolutely free of coercion, discrimination, and violence. It's just a wonderfully empowering definition. Now, a major component of maintaining that sexual health is understanding sexually transmitted infections, or STIs. It's really important to distinguish between viral and bacterial infections here. Viral STIs like HIV, HPV, and herpes currently have no cure, but they can be highly effectively managed with medical therapies. On the flip side, bacterial STIs like syphilis and gonorrhea can be entirely cured with antibiotics. The key takeaway? Early diagnosis, proper medical care, and stripping away all that stigma so people actually feel comfortable seeking the help they need. Moving to Section 5, Navigating Sexual Dysfunctions. This is exactly where biology meets psychology. Sexual functioning is almost never just about the physical mechanics, right? It's heavily influenced by medical factors, deep psychological traumas, and everyday relationship conflicts. The DSM-5 categorizes several sexual dysfunctions, like erectile disorder, female orgasmic disorder, delayed or early ejaculation, and genital pelvic pain disorder. For clinical diagnosis, these issues generally have to persist for at least 6 months and cause significant distress. Treating these conditions requires a ton of empathy, recognizing that past experiences, anxiety, and depression play huge roles. But the good news is they can be treated quite successfully through a combination of pharmacology and targeted psychotherapy. And finally, Section 6, the spectrum of pain, physical hurt, mental anguish. Honestly, nothing disrupts the harmony between body and mind quite like the sheer experience of pain. It's a double whammy of physical hurt and deep mental anguish. We can broadly categorize this into acute and chronic pain. Acute pain is temporary, usually lasting under 6 months, and it's actually an essential physiological response, like the pain you feel from a fractured limb. It tells your body something is wrong. Chronic pain, however, is long-term and often intractable. The source text gives us the examples of Susila, who suffers from debilitating migraines, and Sabina, who is diagnosed with breast cancer. In both cases, the prolonged, relentless nature of chronic pain severely disrupts day-to-day functioning and creates massive psychological instability, anxiety, and fear, not just for the patient, but for their loved ones too. So, how do we actually combat all these physical and mental challenges? Well, the source text introduces this really powerful concept by A.K. Singh called health modernity. It's defined as having scientifically correct information, attitudes, and behaviors essential for healthy living. The ultimate goal here is to fight ignorance and misconception with scientifically accurate knowledge, which is what allows us to build effective awareness programs and real interventions. And that leaves us with one final and honestly pretty vital question for you. How will you apply this health modernity to better understand and balance your own physical and mental well-being today? Whether it's rethinking your diet, approaching health issues with a bit more empathy, or simply recognizing that deep connection between your body and your mind, knowledge really is your most powerful tool. So keep learning, keep questioning, and make sure you take care of your whole self.